Welcome back. Let's continue. So now a few words about how to use HDFS, not yet with MapReduce and Spark, right? But as a user. So what would you do? Create a directory, delete a directory, upload a file, download a file. So that's the sort of things you can already do now without knowing MapReduce and Spark. This is typically done with the shell. The shell is what I told you about. It's this terminal window when you type commands. Here, let me do a quick parenthesis because this is important. You are not computer scientists, so it might be that not all of you have already used the shell like that. It exists in any operating system. In Windows, in macOS, in Linux, you can basically open a command window and type commands. I strongly recommend, if you are not familiar yet with shells, that you take a tutorial. There's plenty on the web to learn the basics of a shell. Make sure that you learn how on your laptop to create a directory with mkdir, to change the directory with cd, change directory, to remove a file with rm, for example, in macOS and Linux, to copy a file with cp and so on. This is the basic of the basic. Why is this important for querying data? Because when you have data sets, and they are on your laptop and you need to manipulate data sets, having to copy data set over and arrange them and so on is actually something that you might have to do. So of course you can use your drag and drop also in the fancy user interface, but very often it's actually just easier to do it on the command line by typing commands. So I strongly encourage all of you to make sure that you are familiar with the basics of the command line window. I saw in the exercises some of you were asking questions. Git clone, git pull, these were two of the commands that you could type in order to automatically replicate the GitHub directory of the team. So make sure that you learn the basics of the terminal. It's really not that complicated. I'm not asking you to become an IT expert in cybersecurity, just that you know the basics of creating a directory, changing the directory, copying files, and so on. All right. Then once you have done that and you know how to do it on your laptop, I have good news, because then it's straightforward to do it with Hadoop. Because the way it works is that you have the hadoopfs command followed by what you want to do. There is another one called HDFS that is specific to HDFS, but usually people don't use it. The reason is that hadoopfs can do not only HDFS, but it also works on your local file system or on S3 or anywhere else. So this is why it's actually popular, right? Okay, so this is why you don't need to know that one. So you can just forget about it and just use hadoopfs. All right, now here comes the best part. If you have done what I told you to take a basic tutorial on how to use the command line on your laptop, then you will know what these things here mean. mkdir is for creating a directory, rm is for removing a file or a directory, cat is for displaying the content of a file, cat. ls is for listing the contents of the current directory, right? And these are, so if you are on your laptop, you will not have the left part. How can I hide that? Maybe let me do it that way. Oh, sorry. Basically here, you type ls, cat, rm, mkdir. This is what you have locally on your laptop. But in HDFS, the only thing you need to add to actually do it on the HDFS cluster is that part, hadoopfs dash, and then the command that you want, right? So you will see it's pretty much the same thing. And then you just go ahead. This is the file you want to display on your screen. This is the file you want to delete. This is the directory you want to create, and so on. The standard is called POSIX. It's actually Linux-like, and you'll find the same on macOS. In Windows, I think you can also emulate the same if you prefer that to the PowerShell and so on. All right. What you can also do that is actually nice is that you can copy over files between your laptop and the HDFS cluster. For example, you might have a data set locally on your laptop, local file 1, local file 2, and you want to copy them over to the Hadoop cluster, right? So you can use the dash copy from local for that. This is going to do what I explained earlier about connecting to the name node and the data nodes and so on, but you don't see it because it just happens automatically with that command. And the other way, that's also what I showed you in my animation, copy to local is if you want to download this entire file to a local file on your laptop. You just type the name there. All right. So we are not parallelizing yet. We are not using MapReduce and Spark yet. This is really to just copy over in both directions the files to and from the HDFS cluster and your laptop. All right, so I recommend you try that out. In Azure, you can actually, with HD Insight, create clusters easily. You can ask for credits if you want to play around. And the TAs might even have a Docker that installs a copy of HDFS to your machine and emulates it. So it might even be that they came up with that. I'm not sure. Do we have that, Wenshi? Do you know that?
Yes, I guess they can play with it.
Wonderful. Yeah. So you can even emulate that on your laptop as if you were actually connected to a cluster. All right. Why am I even annoying you with that? This is just some configuration file that you can change, but this is advanced. You can basically configure when you use this command hadoopfs, your default file system that would basically be the fancy URL of your HDFS cluster with a host and a port. I'll come back to the hosts and port, right? So the port is a bit like a zip code within a machine to know with which process you communicate, and the host is just like a www.ethg.ch is a host, for example, right? And instead of HTTP, you just have HDFS, but it looks like an HTTP URL. All right, but this is already advanced. I'm just saying there are configuration files that look like that. You might have recognized XML, surprise, surprise, but you can change all these parameters. All right, and this is yet more parameters you can change. All right. There are a few tools also to help you. For example, Apache Flume makes it easy to drop log data into HDFS automatically. There is also Apache Scoop that imports from a relational database all your data into HDFS to drop the data over there and so on, right? And a few conclusion slides. I just want to warn you that the terminology between the open source version, so HDFS, the Hadoop one that we saw today, might not use the same words as the Google file system. So I gave you the HDFS paper to read, not the GFS. But if some of you feel adventurous and want to read the GFS paper, you will see that they use completely different words. They don't say name node, they say master. They don't say data node, they say chunk server. They don't say block, they say chunk. They don't say image, file space, image. I don't know if it's file space, I can't remember. File namespace, image, they say checkpoint image. They don't say edit log, they say operation log, and so on and so on. But these are just words. This is just a matter of naming things. You just need to basically be aware that the names can vary from technology to technology, but the IDs are always the same, right? This is the same. The blocks also might vary. I think in GFS, it's 64 megabytes. In Cloudera GFS, it's 128. What is Cloudera? You're going to tell me, well, it's just like the versions of Linux, right? There is Ubuntu, there is Debian, and so on and so on, right? So it's a distribution. So HDFS also has distributions. There is the Cloudera distribution. There is, I forgot, there's basically several of them, and they have different configuration values. It's just a package that you can just download and install. Most of them have 128 megabyte blocks, but some of them might have 64. I guess maybe by now, some of them made the jump to 256, who knows? But this is the idea, right? What's important here is the order of magnitude. It's the order of magnitude. I'm happy with either answer, but if you tell me an HDFS block is 4 kilobytes, I'm not going to be happy because no, that's too small. Or if you tell me an HDFS block is 1 petabyte, that's also not okay, right? If an HDFS block, that's the order of magnitude, roughly. Okay. These are a few papers. The official documentation there, you can go to the latest one if you want. The HDFS paper, you can, of course, read the GFS paper too, but I think now I swapped to the HDFS paper, which is better. And then you also have a Java API if you want to look into it. This is really optional. If you want to see the library to interact with HDFS from Java. There is even a REST API, as far as I know, of HDFS. So if you loved the REST APIs that I showed you last week or the week before, then you can also access HDFS with the REST API. But I warn you, it's much easier to use the command line than the REST API if you are a human to access HDFS. REST APIs are really for computers. Okay, I'm done with the HDFS, with the Hadoop. I didn't tell you already, Hadoop is the name of the elephant toy of dog cutting son. Just so you know, this is why it's called Hadoop. Okay, so thank you very much. I will see you in just a few seconds, the time for me to stop the recording and load the slides of the next part. So see you on the other side.